Hello everyone. My name is Rishi Agarwal. I have giving a little background about myself. I have completed my MTech from IIT Guwahati in the Department of Biosciences and Bioengineering, majorly focusing my work into computational biology, bioinformatics, and systems biology. Now, while doing the course at IIT Guwahati, I was also exploring the Indian life science, which is Ayurveda. And what I understood about Ayurveda is Ayurveda has a lot of database and it's a very complex subject. So since then I started studying Ayurveda for a year in a Ayurveda Institute. So the value Ayurveda is supposed to add into the Indian healthcare ecosystem or the overall healthcare ecosystem is not happening because we do not have the repository of Ayurveda. We do not have the computable database of Ayurveda. We do not have like computational tools as we have in the bioinformatics subject. So I started digitizing the classical text of Ayurveda and has created a computable database of Ayurveda that we call as Ayurveda Informatics that we have already launched. You can access. I'll also give the presentation of the Ayurveda Informatics after the presentation. So let's get started with the very fundamental of Ayurveda and how we have decoded the Ayurveda in a format that we have created the computational framework over which we can access the data that is present in the Ayurveda. Fundamental elements of Ayurveda is fire, water, ether, earth, and wind. So this is the five elements over which all the set of things has manifested in the universe with all set of permutation and combination of these elements, these five elements. So now the whole nature is made up of these five elements with different set of permutation and combination. For example, apple is also made up of these five elements. The human is also made up of this five elements. The elephant is also made up of these five elements, but in a different permutation and combination. So as the nature is built on the same framework, which is running, which is coded basically on these five elements, but these five elements is not very easily perceivable. Like when I'm talking about like fire element, water element, ether element, earth or wind, you might not be able to correlate what exactly it is. You might be taking the literal meaning of like the fire or the water, but it's not like that. It's basically the qualities which is very close by to these elements. So there are different attributes of these elements that is uh, based on which this whole framework is made up of. Now, as these elements are not very easily perceivable, we perceive these elements through different parameters, as we call in the Dravyaguna parameters mentioned in Ayurveda. They are rasa, guna, virya, vipak, karma. So this is basically the five parameters through which we can perceive this permutation and combination of these five elements. Now rasa is basically the taste that we sense over the tongue. There are like six tastes majorly, shad rasa. Guna are the attributes. Giving an example, like we have rice. Basically, it's the nature is heavy, but when we flatten the rice or puff the rice, the nature becomes light. That is laghu. So from heavy it becomes light with the nature of that. So that is basically like the guna. Virya is the potency. That is heat generating, or it makes the system the cool. Vipak is a post-digestive effect. When we consume the food, there is a after effect of that particular food that we call as vipak. Karma is basically, as a name suggests, is the action, which is in the Dravyaguna meaning is the physiological action that targets basically. So as we understood, the whole framework is made up of Pancha Mahabhuta, five elements. We perceive it through these parameters, rasa, guna, virya, vipak, karma. Let's see in a very dual way basically. So the nature is made up of these five elements. Human biological system is also made up of these five elements. Now anything that goes wrong into the human biological system, any imbalances or aggravation or pacification of some kind of imbalance happens, some kind of deviation happens, we have to complement these five elements in a way that it brings a balance into the human biological system. So that's a whole basis of the bringing the health back if something goes wrong into the human biological system. So we take the help from the external agent, that could be like drugs or food or anything from the external, like minerals or something, that we those agent we take into the human biological system in order to bring that balance. So in a human biological system, when this deviation happens, basically, so that deviation you have to perceive it in the five elements manner, understanding the qualities of this, which is basically understood through the dosha. So we have like three dosha: Vata, Pitta, and Kapha dosha. So Vata is made up of two of these elements, five elements, which is air. Pitta is also made up of those one of the two elements of those five elements. Similarly, like the Kapha is made up of water element and the earth element. Now, in a human biological system, when the imbalances happen of this dosha, the deviation is showed in the form of rupa and purva rupa, which is a prodromes and the sign and symptom. So maybe like you have acidity, or you may have like constipation, or you have loose motion and all that. So these are the sign and symptom that shows when some kind of deviation happen in the human biological system. Now we perceive that sign and symptom uh, in the dosha form, and finally in the imbalances of these five elements. After understanding this deviation and what kind of imbalances or the deviation has happened, we have to uh, have the complement pairing of the external agent in a manner that it brings down. For example, if you have acidity, the very common thing is that you consume the water in order to balance that acidity. So that is a very basic example. Similarly, if you have say for example constipation, there is no movement, so you take some laxative that enhances the movement of the bowel movement. So we have to understand the deviation and decode or decipher that in the form of dosha and those five elements, and then understand the Dravya parameters, and use the external agent, that could be drug, food, or something, into the human biological system to bring that balance. So now we have understand the whole framework of like the how the Panchamahabhuta has created or manifested in the form of existence of the universe, that we see in the two format. One is the human biological system, and the other is the external agent, could be drugs, minerals, food, anything. We understand the human biological system through the deviation that happens, and perceive that in the form of dosha, and what elemental imbalances has happened, and accordingly integrate the external agent into the human biological system to bring that into the balance. Let's understand in the form of mapping. So once the deviation or some imbalance happen, that leads to another deviation, so the mapping has to be done. So we have to understand, so once a patient come, he explained like he was having initially like vomiting, and then he has loose motion and all that. So we have to consider those sign and symptom, and map that, like first step this happened, then second step. We have to understand how the progression of the imbalances or the disease is happening. So here I'm giving an example of like Mutraghata, that is one of the diseases which have certain signs and symptoms like whitish urine, thickness in urine, burning micturition, interrupted flow of urine, then non-production of urine. So this sign and symptom is associated to the Mutraghata. So now we have diagnosed through this sign and symptom that okay, this is this particular disease. Once we have mapped and understood the disease in this mapping format of Purva, Rupa, and Rupa, at each step we have to similarly decode in the form of what elemental imbalances has happened, and for that particular stage of disease progression we have to map the dravya, the external agent, that could be herb, plant, or dietary element, and we have to map and bring that stage into balance. So as you can see over the screen, so for the whitish urine we have mapped the Agni Mantha, then thickness in urine, Shalya, then burning micturition, Gokshura, then interrupted flow of urine, Vanya Jiraka, then non-production of urine, Vanda. So we have tried to map. So each state we can map the herb or the external elements, or we can create a new drug. So that's the whole idea of discovering a new drug or formulating a new drug uh, computationally. I'll show you through the platform of Ayurveda Informatics how that is happening. So what could be the use cases of the Ayurveda Informatics? So you can generate the prescription in which is Ayurveda driven. You can generate or formulate a new recipe, then personalized nutrition, drugs or herbal formulation. New drugs you can form by mapping these sign and symptoms, or any of the product development. So the whole idea is basically Ayurveda is a huge database of life science. So let's enable the Ayurveda with technological intervention and computational tools. So moving towards Ayurveda Informatics platform. So as you can see over the screen, so this is the platform, and over the landing page, as you can see, on the left hand side we have the parameters based on which the basically the prescription or the suggestion has is done. So rasa, guna, karma, virya, vipak. From the modern science, we have chemical constituent and disease, that is a roga. Disease also include the sign and symptom. So selecting the variables under these categories of rasa, guna, karma, we generate the list of ingredients that should be recommended or suggested into the prescription to the patient. So the very raw use case I'll explain in the clinic what happens. So I'm a doctor and a patient comes with a certain sign and symptom, height, weight, and all that. So I've considered all those things like physical data, medical history, all sort of data. Now I have to figure out the imbalances, like I was explaining, what imbalances has happened. Now understanding the imbalances, I have to know what complementary elemental I have to introduce into that particular patient. So I have to select those parameters, variables under these parameters of rasa, guna, karma, virya, vipaka. And on the right hand side, as you can see, you can generate a new recipe or food innovation or personalized nutrition. You can provide an Ayurvedic supplement, and the whole this platform can also be used for your research, thesis, and blogging work as well. Now let's take an example. So as you can see in the screen, so we have set a different section, different categories for the search of a set of ingredients as given in the Ayurveda database. So there is a Dravaguna section, there is chemical constituent section, there is a disease section, Ayurvedic formulation, and advanced search that includes all the parameters and the variables. Now let's say a patient comes and I have done the health assessment of that patient, and I want to suggest the patient of something that has light property, laghu, as you can see, and I want to initiate the mutrala in the patient because he's having some urinary obstruction problem, and he is also having some eye problem. So I want to target on the chakshushya, like improvement of the eye power, and thus patient should consume something which is madhura or sweet in taste. So I select madhura, and the virya tasir uh, is sita. So now I have selected these 5 parameters. So I want to suggest something of laghu property, mutrala, chakshushya. So these terms are Sanskrit. So mutrala is basically that helps in micturition, urination. Chakshushya is that improves the eyesight power. Madhur is the taste, which is sweet, as you can see in the bracket. The translated has been given, and Sita is something that when we consume it cools the body. So I have known these parameters based on which I want to generate the prescription. So now I submit this, and now as you can see we have a list of ingredients, and this is all in the rank wise order based on the mapping that has happened for the variables that I have selected under the Dravaguna parameters. So in the first column you can see the plant name is in Sanskrit as given in the Ayurveda, like Shali, Potagala, Amalaki, Mudgaparni. On the other column we have botanical name, Oriza Sataiva, and all that. And the third column we have English name and the part used in the last column. So the filter has also been given in the Ayurveda Informatics platform. So if you want like seed, culinary herb, spice, fruit, legume, nut, additive. So whatever kind of culinary category that you want to suggest or you want to consume, so you have that option to select. And when we click on one particular ingredient, say I'm clicking on Shali, so I get more detailed information as given in the Ayurveda and the Pharmacopoeia. So Shali is there, the name of the ingredient, then Oryza sativa, the botanical name, and the description, macroscopic and microscopic botanical description of this particular ingredient. The part used, culinary category, distribution and habitat, disease in which this is indicated, standard dosage of this, then Ayurvedic formulation in which this particular ingredient is present, the chemical constituent, and the other data. In the second page, we have the Dravaguna data of this ingredient. So Karma, Rasa, Guna, Vira, Vipak. So Karma, as you can see, like Chakshushya Mutrala, which I selected as in the input while selecting the parameters. So Chakshushya Mutrala has been highlighted. Similarly, as you can see in the Rasa, Guna, Vira category also, the input has been highlighted, so that if also you forget what variables you selected while generating the prescription, so you remember in the output as well. In the third page, we have given the common names of ingredient in the local Indian languages like Assamese, Kannada, Odia, Kashmiri, Marathi, etc. And the last page, we have the scientific classification of this particular ingredient. We have also connected the Wikipedia page link with this in order if you want to get more information of this particular ingredient. So now I have presented you how to generate the list of ingredients in a rank-wise order based on the parameters, Dravaguna parameters. Now I will show you a patient that comes with a certain sign and symptom or disease. So say a patient comes with asthma, so I select like asthma, and he is also suffering from cough, so I select cough, and the person is also obese, so he has obesity, so I selected obesity. Now three disease or sign and symptom has been selected here. I want to know what ingredients should be suggested under this three set of disease and sign and symptom to the patient. I submit these three parameters, and as you can see, camphor, barley, garlic, eucalyptus. This should be suggested in a patient that has these three conditions: asthma, cough, and obesity. So once you click on, similarly, like when you click on particular ingredient, you get more detailed information and the mapping of the sign and symptom and disease. So here, as you can see, so the cough, obesity, and asthma has been mapped. So this is the second approach to generate the prescription or the suggestion as per the Ayurveda, which is Ayurveda driven. So this is how this has been done. We have also given the chemical constituent data. So for example, you want like gingerol, and so which ingredient has gingerol chemical constituent? So shuthi, that is a ginger root, has this particular ingredient. Similarly, you can select like more chemical constituent over here. I select like Vidanolites, so and so which ingredient has this particular chemical constituent? So that is ashwagandha. So right, so this is how we have basically done the mapping of the parameters which is associated to the dietary element and the drugs, and how the Ayurvedic practitioner can leverage on selecting the variables which is numerous in the number and generate the prescription in a rank wise order. So that's a whole idea. Now we are taking an approach on creating the e-clinics as platform for the Ayurvedic doctors, integrated with the computable database of Ayurveda and through the integration of machine learning, active learning, so that when the automated prescription is generated, the Ayurvedic practitioner can give the feedback over that, which goes into the backend, active learning happens, and it becomes more and more intelligent. So that is all about the computational approach towards Ayurveda and how we have created the first computable database of Ayurveda, that is Ayurveda Informatics. So if at all you have like any doubts on computational approach on Ayurveda or on using this Ayurveda informatics, if you are interested, maybe you can comment or reach out to me on if you want to use this platform. So I would be really happy in collaborating or helping you out in using this platform. So yeah, thank you.